Welcome back into another episode of George in the Jungle, presented by Bearcat Journal, along with Remington Tavern. Check out Remington Tavern at 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where you have your daily happy hour from 3 to 7 p.m. $5 Woodford Wednesdays. You can check them out on Instagram at RemyTav Cincy. That's REMITAV Cincy with a Y, or follow them on Facebook. And with that, George,
Yes,
how
sir.
are you today?
Doing good. We got a special guest, so I'm doing better.
You're in
And
Florida.
I felt like I was in the jungle. I saw alligators today, cranes. I saw a bald eagle flying over. That was cool. That's the first time I think in the wild I've seen a bald eagle like that. So yeah, I'm down in Florida. Got out to the golf course today. So life was grand today, and it's even better tonight. Having Coach with us to talk a little UC baseball before we get this season cranked up.
Well, happy you were able to join us from Florida. We do have Coach Jordan Bishel with us, the newest addition to the coaching staffs here at Cincinnati. I do believe. I don't know if there's a head coach newer than you here, but you are kind of along the same path as Coach Satterfield, where you are joining up as you get to be part of the inaugural season in the Big 12. So, welcome to Cincinnati.
Appreciate it. Simple task, right? We're not only going to take on a new job, we're going to do it joining one of the 2 or 3 best baseball conferences in America. Should be a walk in the park, right?
No big deal, right?
Yeah.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've had some walks in the park though over the course of your career, and seeing where you started out at Midland University, did well there, did well at Division II Northwood for 4 seasons, and 5 seasons at Central Michigan, compiling a record of 177 and 80 and 4 MAC titles. And I know the MAC is more of a Midwest conference and all that, but you've had a lot of success coaching at northern schools, and that's not always how it works out, is it?
No, I mean that's some I think our programs have taken a lot of pride in. I think there's quite a few programs in those colder climates that use it as a crutch or as an excuse, and I've just always kind of challenged our guys that it just can't matter. Ultimately, I mentioned it to our guy. Obviously, the early part of January here was pretty brutal this year, and we, as we build some new facilities, we've got some challenges in that area. And I met with our guys the first day of school, and I said, listen, I tried talking to the NCAA, but if we lose our first 5 games because the weather stunk and we couldn't practice outside, they're not going to forgive them. So they're going to count either way, and just got to prepare. But ultimately, there's ways to prepare in tough conditions. And I think the flip side of that coin is there's some pretty talented players in this part of the country. And if you can keep those guys close to home, they maybe play with a little chip on their shoulder with something to prove. And by the time you hit May and June up in Michigan, it's well into the 40s. And so it's nice and warm out by then anyway.
That's awesome. That is awesome. But what have you found here that you get to Cincinnati entering the Big 12? What is the mindset of your players, and what have you found that you already have on hand as you get your feet wet here?
Yeah, it's been a really coachable group. They've been a lot of fun to be around. Obviously, there's days that are better and worse than others in terms of pure performance on the field, but in terms of kind of seeing our vision and seeing what our philosophies are going to be and trying to embrace those things, they've been awesome. And it really, even in the classroom in the fall, we had a 3.41 or 42 team GPA, which was a program record. And obviously smart kids don't guarantee we win baseball games, but it shows they're doing the right things, right? They're going to class, they're turning things in, they're investing in that. That's something we challenge them with. And it's kind of been that way on the field too. When we've asked for something, they've given it a pretty good shot. And so it's been an easy team to coach in terms of their personalities and their attitudes. The challenge of getting better every day is obviously a lot of work, and prepping for this conference isn't easy, but the job itself has been a ton of fun because the kids have been great.
What kind of challenges have you faced in the little quick time you've been here, I guess?
Yeah, I think for me, one of the bigger challenges was, if you look at historically our coaching staff, I've had virtually no turnover on our staffs over the last 8 or 9 years. Kyle Schrader, who's on our staff here, has been with me going all the way back to Midland at the NAIA level. Had a couple other assistant coaches that were really stable. And guys, Tom Winsky, one of our assistants, was my college coach, so I've known him for 25 years now. And we hired a couple of new staff members that were really highly regarded, but I didn't know previously. And so taking over a new team, you obviously have to acclimate with a new roster, but also getting with those guys and just making sure we're all aligned and on the same page. It's a great staff, but it takes time to build that chemistry too. And I think we're feeling a lot more comfortable this semester, just having been around each other. And so it's a lot of change, right? And then you throw in jumping into a new league and how that plays out, whether it's the change in how we're traveling or the competition. It's a lot of moving parts in a short period of time. And if you look at our programs historically, we want to have success right away. We've won quite a few games early on, and I don't know if that happens this year, but that's been the goal from the outset. Is it's not we want to take 3 or 4 years. We want to be competitive right away. So you have to acclimate and assimilate all those things pretty quickly.
Obviously, getting into a power conference has got to be something that attracted you. But take us through a little bit of that process of what else attracted you to Cincinnati and how all this came about that they could get you down here from Central Michigan where you have.
Yeah, for sure. I was pretty picky in what our family was looking for, only because we had a great thing going at CMU. Our family was happy there. I'm from Wisconsin, so relatively close to home. We were having a lot of success. We had great support. But Cincinnati, obviously, like you mentioned, the conference affiliation is big. The Big 12 is a big factor, but I also wasn't excited to sign up for something if I didn't think it could also be successful wherever they were affiliated. And I think you just see a lot of momentum, with the university, right? Enrollment's through the roof. It's going up every year. And you sense that excitement on the campus. But you could see it within the department too. There's some momentum there. There's a lot of positive things. You're seeing it with our basketball team right now. They're having a tremendous, I know their record is not off the charts in the Big 12, but every game it's tooth and nail with top 25 teams. Like there's a lot of good things going. And I sense that when I talked to John and worked through that. I also loved how involved John was in the process. You could tell he wanted to get this right. And whether I'm the perfect coach or not, it's not so much that, but he was invested. He spent a lot of time in this process. And I think in college baseball, you're going to find some places that the athletic director is not all that invested. It's a football, basketball mentality, but it really impressed me that John, you could tell this mattered to him. You could tell college baseball, the Big 12 affiliation, the athletics department as a whole. He doesn't just want a good football program or a good basketball program. He wants a great department. And he also recognized that within the Big 12, baseball matters. It's a big deal. They've sent 5 different teams to the World Series the last 5 years, and you could tell that it was important. So that was exciting. But even going back, I mentioned Coach Winsky was my college coach. He grew up in the 70s. He was a huge fan of the Big Red Machine and the Johnny Benches. And so he's mentioned to me for years, man, Cincinnati's just a great baseball town. And so that alone just created some intrigue, but you start to piece all those things together. For me, the weather here is great. I know that sounds funny to some people, but honestly, we've been practicing outside for the last week. I never dreamed of doing that stuff in February. And so there were a ton of different positive pieces. And when you all mixed them all together, it really became a no-brainer.
I know there were a lot of renovations done at the stadium here in this offseason to get Big 12 ready, much along the same line with the rest of the facilities on campus. I know that the outfield wall was one of the big projects. What other renovations can we expect to see?
They had put in an artificial turf surface. I want to say it was 8, 9, 10 years ago, something like that. And we replaced that for the first time this past summer. And so brand new turf out there, which obviously is a nice playing surface for our guys, but also looks sharp. The outfield wall used to be just kind of a chain link with a windscreen, and it was just replaced with full-on 12-foot padding and a changed batter's eye. It really gives it a much more stadium-like feel. We're starting to do some new graphics and flooring on the interior of it, which will obviously help with things like recruiting, but also recognizes some of the really successful big leaguers we've had in recent years. And so just a lot of different pieces. And then, what they're doing with that football facility will dramatically impact us in a year or so here when that gets done. Obviously, that's 100 yards of indoor turf we can practice, but a brand new nutrition center that'll serve all student athletes, that'll be huge for our guys. It's right across the sidewalk from our stadium. And so you're going to see that piece really impact us. It expands the weight room and strength and conditioning areas. So a lot of different pieces with some momentum going.
Very cool. And don't forget, if you wanted to get any of those tickets to see games, you can go to gobearcats.com/tickets, as the season is literally right around the corner.
And that's what I was going to get at. February 16th, you're down here in Florida at Jacksonville.
Yeah, we'll be in Jacksonville in 10 days.
Yeah. And what do you expect when this season starts, or do you know what to expect out of this?
I don't. I know there'll be ups and downs early. I know there'll be things that I think we're prepared for that maybe we aren't. I do think we have an offensive team that's pretty ready to compete and be successful. We returned some key pieces that were good, but also added about 5 pieces in the transfer portal that are really proven high-level Division I players. And so that piece, we're going to bring some depth and some experience. The other side on the pitching, and thank God nobody thinks you need good pitching to win baseball games, right? Nobody would ever say that. But that part, we're young, we're inexperienced. And so that's going to be a little bit up and down and a learning curve. But I think we'll get a lot better as we go. But if there's a piece I'm saying, man, I'm not sure what to expect, it's going to be on the mound early.
Now you have plenty of matchups against some, especially early in the season, some familiar faces. Xavier on the schedule, Northern Kentucky on the schedule, my alma mater, Wright State on the schedule. How important are some of those rivalry games to you, especially as you have these 1-game sample sizes?
Yeah, it's interesting because I spend a lot of time with our guys talking about just the value of making every game the same. I mean, if I make one game more important than another one, what does it say about a different one down the road? So I don't spend a lot of time on that, but I'm also smart enough to recognize that for a number of our guys that are from this area and they're playing against the Xavier or Wright State or Miami of Ohio, they're bound to have some pretty good relationships with a number of guys, whether it's travel ball, high school ball, whatever. And you see their name in the press, and Xavier was a regional finalist last year, and certainly that's a spot we want to be in the not too distant future. And so I think for our guys, they probably ramp it up. For me, I can't spend too much time circling those games because when on the weekend you've got an Oklahoma State or a TCU waiting for you, they're all going to be challenging and difficult. But I do think it's pretty awesome that, again, coming from CMU, there were very few Division I schools in the state, and most of those that were in our league. And so the ability to play some of these within the city or close by games, well, you don't have to get on a bus and ride 3 hours to play on a Tuesday, and you're playing a bunch of regional opponents. I think that creates a pretty cool dynamic on Tuesdays and Wednesdays at the ballpark where there's kind of that built-in rivalry of the geography.
You mentioned bringing in some players in the transfer portal, and with that and NIL, and we see such, I almost consider it chaos in basketball and football now. What's it like in baseball, and how big of a piece is NIL in baseball right now?
It is becoming chaos. It's borderline chaos. There are programs that have 7 figures in NIL money now. Obviously, it's not as widespread and as deep as you might find in football and basketball, but there, if you want to be competitive at the very, very highest level, it's pretty difficult to do it without some NIL funding. Now, there's probably different models to that and how it's built. I think, the LSUs of the world probably have some resources to sign free agents, for lack of a better term. I think for us, our goal is more the retention piece. One of the funny things with college baseball is we have 11.7 scholarships for a 40-man roster. And so almost every one of our guys has pretty significant out-of-pocket expense. I mean, if we can cover your tuition and you're on your own for room, board, and those kind of things, we're doing pretty well for you. And obviously that's a lot different model than basketball and football where you have full scholarships. And so a piece where NIL is impactful to our guys is it can pay their tuition bill. It can keep them from taking out loans. It can put gas in their gas tank to get on and off campus. Like it's a different, it's a different approach, I think, than you would see in some of our other sports, and really can be more impactful on our kids. But at those highest levels, you're starting to see a lot more than that. You're starting to see some six-figure transfers and things like that. Our goal in the recruiting process is really to make that a supplementary piece to. It's not really that free agency type model, but it's out there. I mean, coming from a mid-major school, there was always in the back of your head, who's going to track down player A or player B and make them very aware that they can make $50 or $100 or $200,000 if they come to our school. Thankfully, we didn't have that happen. But it's kind of the nature of the beast at this point. I don't know if it's good, bad, or indifferent. It doesn't pay to complain about it. There's certainly some benefits for these guys. We want these guys to have great opportunities, but it is challenging as a coach to know that there are programs that are turning over half their roster every single year.
Now, we will have a link for the Diamond Club, which is a subsidiary of the Cincy Reigns NIL, in the link on the YouTube page when we finish recording this episode. If you wanted to donate, you'll be able to do that just simply clicking the link. But it looks like there are two levels currently with the Cincy Reigns. For $2,500 a year, you get a game-worn jersey not framed, invite to exclusive tailgate, and access to 3 annual Zoom calls with the head coach, fall, preseason, and postseason, where you can do kind of what we're doing right now. Or the level 2 gets you $10,000 a year. Or for $10,000 a year, gets you level 1 benefits, plus an invite to 2 small group lunches with the head coach and access to season chalk talk to discuss upcoming opponents, scouting reports, etc. Again, you can find that at cincyreigns.org, as Cincy Reigns has been partnered up with pretty much all of the sports at this point, I believe. So
yeah, we just got that Diamond Club going, and that's going to be huge for us. If we really want to be competitive in this league, we're going to have to help our guys out. And again, what's cool to me is we're not really paying players. We're trying to help them pay bills. And I think it's nice to know we're helping them. And again, we have 3.4 students. That's great. We know we're helping out guys that are doing their job in the classroom, but really what could be more enjoyable than spending time with me? So A, you're getting to help players, but you get to see my smiling face a little bit more, and it really doesn't get any better than that, right?
Yeah.
Super humble. We love it.
Yeah. As you build this roster, you've got some talent on hand, and D1 baseball gave some of your players glowing reviews, and we're going to get to that in a second. And Aaron, you may have the list there in front of you. I've but I also wanted to ask you, one of the guys on that list is coming with you from Central Michigan. Tell me a little bit about this Christian Mitchell. Mostly an infielder, or does he also pitches some? Or?
Yeah. So Christian last year was a true freshman for us at CMU, and pretty early on in the season, he became an everyday player. Played third base for us every day, but was a really good shortstop in high school, and that's kind of where we had projected he'd be moving to. And so he should play short for us basically every day. He's not the most talented pitcher in the world, but he's awfully competitive, and we were able to use him in some late game situations last year, pounds of strike zone. And so I think if everything goes the way we want it to on the mound, we won't use him a whole lot in that setup. He's an infielder by trade, but we know what we're going to get there with some pretty competitive baseball if we need that. But Christian is just for a sophomore, incredibly seasoned and mature, and has quickly become a team leader. We were fortunate enough to have 4 guys come with us from CMU. He's probably the most acclaimed one, but all 4 of those guys have been great teammates in terms of not pushing any of our views on to people, but just helping them understand what we're trying to do and provide some leadership and some guidance as to kind of the things we're teaching. And that's really helped with the transition. But Christian's a pretty special kid, a pretty special player. I expect him to really impact us this year, but then as he gets into his junior year, become really a difference maker for us.
According to D1 Baseball, they have him as the number 19 2025 MLB draft prospect. Some of the other ones from that same article from D1 Baseball, you had junior first baseman Tommy O'Connor coming in at 33 for 2024. And then Josh Cross, who comes in from Eastern Michigan, is number 38 for 2024. What can you tell us about those two guys?
Yeah, both those guys can hit. They can flat out hit. That's what I can tell you. Josh was actually in our league last year at Eastern Michigan, and obviously had a firsthand look at the production he had. Just a tremendous season, and he's only gotten better with us this fall. He is tough to pitch to and a tough out. And Tommy has some of the biggest raw power that I've legitimately ever seen. I was fortunate to coach several years of collegiate summer baseball, where I coach a bunch of guys to move on to the big leagues, and he's right there with these guys. Ryan Noda, Joey Weimer came by some this fall, and you see the same type of body, the same type of power. But he's been really good in terms of his hitting approach, and those are two guys that obviously they've still got to go out and do it this spring, but they're fun to watch hit, not just because they're talented hitters, but they've learned some real hitting approach. They've become really tough outs. I mean, those two guys will hit somewhere in the heart of the order, and between the two of them could easily put 30, 35, 40 home runs on the board.
Two of the other names that come up for 2025 would include Griffin Hughes at number 28, and also Nathan Taylor, I believe a freshman pitcher.
Yep.
So what about those two guys?
Yeah, Griff actually started a bunch on our infield last year, played a fair amount of the middle infield, was in the order quite a bit, and he's still in the mix to do some of that, but his real upside is on the mound. He threw maybe 20 innings as a freshman last year, but he's starting to really come into his own. The fastball keeps climbing. He found a little 95 and 96 the other day, throw strikes. The slider's good, but he's got the two-way guys that hit too sometimes just have a little bit more of that competitiveness to him. Nothing against those pitchers. I was a pitcher, so I can't say too much, but he's got some of that just athlete compete on the mound. He has tremendous upside on the mound and could be a big piece for us. And Nate Taylor's a big 6'4", 6'5" freshman who pounds a strike zone 91 to 93, maybe touch 94, but still young. Really sky's the limit type of guy. He'll have some good opportunities early and will have a chance to grow into a really big role as the year goes on.
Yeah, Nate was 23 on that freshman list. Griffin was 28 on the 2025 list. One of the questions here in the chat, while George is getting reacclimated here, and
I think I'm back. My wife called in the middle of this thing.
The nerve.
Well, can I tell you? I think she's half in the bag, but I'll find out after this show.
I think this.
Well, she heard the comment about the Diamond Club. She was calling you to try to join, so she
that
was
may
time talking to me. That had to be what it was.
She wanted FaceTime with Coach George.
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't figure out how to get her in the chat, and it's probably a good thing I did.
But El Chihuahua here asks, Coach, how is your high school recruiting going? Are you concentrating on local talent or nationwide? Any recommendations to high school players on how to get seen by UC baseball?
Yeah, first, how to get seen, and this is a genuine answer. The best way to make sure we see you, we'll run at about 4 to 5 prospect camps throughout the year. You got to get to one of those things because the travel ball circuit is all over the country with hundreds and then thousands of teams. And then you go to a game and said player walks 3 times on 12 pitches and never gets a swing off. Like, we go to a ton of baseball games, but it is hard to canvas everything. And so we really push guys, like, if you really think you can play at this level, you have to come to one of our camps because we're going to get 3, 4, 5 hours with you in a setting where we can truly evaluate you. That's not the only way to recruit somebody, but it is the best way for us to get really true feedback. We probably signed 5 guys out of our camps from this late summer, early fall already. That's a huge recruiting tool for us, probably more than other sports, because again, baseball, we don't have the video. We don't have the ability to evaluate quite as easily as maybe a football or basketball. So that's that piece of it. The high school recruiting, we're really enjoying it. I think in terms of concentration, we want to stay in this region primarily. We'll consider anybody from anywhere in the country or anywhere in the world if it's a good fit for them and a good fit for Cincinnati. But I'm a pretty big believer that our goal is we want to build in this area. You know, this part of Ohio has tremendous baseball. If we kept every highly talented kid close to home, we could build a really big chunk of that roster. Now, not every kid's going to want to go to Cincinnati, obviously. Some want to go south, some have other options, but we need to really work to retain a number of kids from this area because there's plenty of baseball depth in the area. I tried really hard in Michigan to recruit in Ohio, and it was difficult. Not a lot of kids, believe it or not, want play a spring sports 6 hours north when they visit in March and there's still snow on the ground and those kind of things. But we recognize the opportunity down here. And so we're excited about that. I think we'll also recruit a lot of kind of those northern states, Michigan, Illinois, Wisconsin, because they have a chance to get a little bit south, but still stay close to home. And to me, that's what's unique about how we're affiliated in the Big 12. And the Big 10 is obviously a tremendous conference, but baseball wise, the Big 12 is superior. And that's not me puffing my chest out. It's just what the metrics would say. We're typically going to be a 6, 7, 8 bid team or league in the NCAA tournament. And so all of a sudden for kids in Ohio, Southern or Northern or Michigan or Illinois, you have a chance to play in a really powerful league and play against some of the best teams in the country, but do it when your parents can take a 2, 3, 4 hour drive to campus, or a half hour if it's in our own backyard. And that's a unique opportunity. Again, I talked earlier about playing a little bit with that chip on your shoulder. I think finding guys that want to prove, hey, these Northern guys can hang with a TCU or an Oklahoma State or whatever that may be. That's what we want to do. Now, we also have a national brand at this point. We had a kid fly to one of our camps this fall. He was from California. He saw his major on our website. He saw we were affiliated with the Big 12. He came in and was incredibly impressive on the mound, and we ended up signing or committing a California guy. I can't throw names out there, or I'm going to get myself in trouble with compliance because he's not signed yet. But again, there is a national presence. People will come see us from all over the country. So we're open to recruit nationally, but the focus is really going to be on Ohio and kind of then the Kentucky, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, Illinois, surrounding northern states.
When you get someone that does that, like, and I don't want to get you in trouble here, but when someone from that far away takes notice of the program, does that surprise you maybe a little bit getting here, and how satisfying is it to know?
Yeah, it really did. The first couple of camps, I would look at the roster and say, what is this kid doing coming from California? But then you see a couple come from Georgia, and somebody comes from Oklahoma, and and some of that is through connections. We know a coach in a certain region who says, hey, this is a player that's getting overlooked. But again, this was a student who we had a pretty unique major who he saw it on the website, and he was being recruited by some pretty good schools out in Southern California, but just saw it as a potential fit. But 100%, it's flattering and it's exciting. And what's cool about it is when these kids do get to campus, like I said, Cincinnati has a ton of momentum right now. When we've had recruits visit campus, they walk away impressed. Whether it's Nippert, whether it's the proximity of everything, whether it's the fact that we've got dorms that overlook our field, it's a pretty exciting place to walk around when we get kids on campus. And so I think there is some opportunity there for sure to find some select kids.
What else you got for Coach George? I know we're at
couple other things
mark.
about, but so when I'm going through your record, your resume, all that, coached in the Northwoods Summer Collegiate League, and there were some good players that came through that league. What was that experience like for you, and what did you take from that? Because I got to think you were around a lot of talented ball players.
Yeah, that was an awesome experience. You play 72 games in 77 days, and the league is still good, but I coached there from 2009 to 2012. And at that time, I think there were 14 teams. Now I think there's a little over 20. There's a few less guys playing summer baseball than there used to be. So it's maybe watered down a little. It's still a premier summer league, but at that time, you were seeing a couple hundred guys out of that league drafted on an annual basis. And for me, I had coached at the Division III level. I was young then. I was pushing 30 or just into my younger 30s. And it was an incredible experience. It gave me some insight as to, just how different guys from different programs operated. I could pick brains of guys. Hey, how does your pitching coach teach you this? Or how do you go about that? And so tremendous learning experience. It was a networking experience to get to know coaches from all over the country and learn about their programs. And some of those relationships, we were at our national convention, and I had a good chance to talk to Jay Johnson, who just won the national title at LSU. But our relationship started when I was coaching some of his players in that league. And so you gave me a great chance. It was just a tremendous learning opportunity. But it also opened my eyes to the fact that these guys were more talented than the Division III guys I was coaching, but baseball is still baseball. And you start to realize if you do things right, hey, you fit at this level. You can be a part of coaching at this level. And so I think it also instilled some confidence that if I continued to learn and do the right things, that I could be a part of helping those guys develop, not just observing them and learning from them, but hopefully they could start to learn from me. But awesome experience. One summer we had Philip Irvin, who was a first-round draft pick, Mitch Haniger, who was a first-round draft pick, and Jacob May, who was a second-round draft pick. They were our 3 starting outfielders. You had 3 first or second. I mean, unbelievable to be around that level of talent on a daily basis.
Yeah, I knew that league was good back then, and boy, having that on the same team is unbelievable.
Yeah, 2010 team or 11, one of those years had 16 guys that went on to be drafted. I mean, that's over half your roster, right? It was pretty crazy.
Yeah, and I would think, given your background and the schools you're at and being up there, player development was just huge for you. And you got to see some of it there, but probably more so at the universities you were at.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I've always prided myself on making sure you have to recruit at a high level, whether that's Division III or the SEC. If you don't have good players, obviously you're not going to be successful. But everywhere I've been, we kind of established enough success that we're trying to outkick our coverage, if that makes sense. When we're playing in the MAC, we were trying to win games at NCAA regionals, and we weren't going to have the depth of talent as a Florida or a Mississippi State or Miami, and we still played pretty well against those schools, and you had to do that through player development and buy-in, and so certainly was something we took great pride in, and it's been awesome to see some guys that were pretty lightly recruited out of high school end up getting drafted, playing professional baseball, having a shot at the big leagues. That's really neat, and it's really rewarding. But I think that's going to carry over here a lot. I think we can recruit some really high level talent. I think we can get some really good players. But I also think if I sat on this show and said, we're just going to line up with TCU and Texas Tech and Texas and be just as talented when there's probably a little different talent pool down there. There's better weather. There's a little more development that goes on at young ages. There's piles of NIL money. There's a lot of resources that we can't match. But if we can close that gap with our recruiting and then work our tail off with the development piece, there's a good chance our 21-year-olds can look just like their 21-year-olds after we spend a few years with them.
Love that attitude.
Yep.
Get after it, coach. The season does start February 16th, starting off at Jacksonville. And then the first home game will be against Northern Kentucky on February 20th. You can get tickets again at gobearcats.com/tickets. $75 will get you a season ticket for an adult. $50 will get you season tickets for youth 4 through 12, military or seniors 65 and older. Or, of course, you can get single game tickets for $5 general admission and $8 reserved seating.
28 games for $75. I mean, can you beat that?
No, you can't. That's a great deal. And you're going to
incredible value.
I mean, I'm looking, the Big 12 had 5 teams last year with 40 or more wins. Yeah. I mean,
the depth of the league is incredible. Again, 5 years in a row, there's been a World Series representative, but it's been 5 different teams, which to me is kind of mind blowing. I think it's Texas, Texas Tech, TCU, Oklahoma State, and Oklahoma have all been there. I mean, it's one thing if you got 1 or 2 teams that are just plowing through, but to have that kind of depth, it's really exciting. I mean, there's going to be high level baseball at our ballpark this spring.
The media voted you at number 14 going into the league here. I believe D1 Baseball had you as high as 11. But what do you have to say in defense of this team as you're not given a much of a puncher's chance there at 14?
Yeah, I mean, I've coached teams that were not picked real high and finished just fine. I'd much rather look at the actual standings and have us higher than. But ultimately, we really haven't talked about it much. Like, you can't control wins and losses in August, September, October, November. Even right now, we're not playing games right now. We're practicing. We're trying to get better. We're competing with each other, and it's really there's a process that we have to trust. We're going to lose some games this year, but I think we can win an awful lot of them. And we've got some hungry kids. Like I get it every week when we line up, there's going to be a pretty talented team across in the other dugout. But I've also coached enough against these high level teams. We opened at Baylor last year with a 3-game series. And we've played series at West Virginia and different places. I've seen enough of it to know there's enough talent in our locker room that we may not walk away with 40 wins. That's going to be a challenge, but there is no doubt that every weekend we can show up with a team that can come away with some wins. I really believe this group can can raise some eyebrows. The challenge is the depth of talent in the league is so good. It's like you're seeing with our basketball team. Even playing great, they're losing a fair number of games, but they're also winning their fair share too. And I think we can do a lot of those similar things.
Well, I don't have anything else, George, unless you do.
I got the dumbest question in the world in baseball that I probably shouldn't even put out there.
Let it go.
Well, okay. So, and I played a lot of baseball when I was younger, and every team I was on had a baseball coach. But at the professional level, it's a baseball manager. I don't get it. Why is that?
And you can ask why they're also wearing the uniform, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's funny. I've never figured that out. I get it. You're managing the team and all, but I don't know why the rest of the baseball coaches aren't managing.
Because for about 130 years, baseball was a bunch of traditionalists that wanted to have things their way, and it's just starting to change. So maybe you can enact that change that will be titled the same way as everybody else.
It doesn't bother me that much, but I always wondered about it. Started thinking, you're a coach, all my coaches were coaches, but you get to the professional level, they're managers. But
it's funny because if you look on the website, I'm sure I'm listed as a head coach, but if you look down the road to the Reds, that's the manager. Great. Maybe they don't coach at that level. They just kick over the balls and they manage it.
You may be on to something there, but I think those managers would probably take offense or argue that point. Listen, Coach, it's been great. I appreciate having you on and sticking around with us as long as you have, and I wish you the best luck in the world. And it's exciting. It's exciting to have you down here, given your track record, and hopefully we see some W's start racking up here in the next few seasons.
Yeah, anytime you want to come back on.
What's that?
Anytime you want to come back on, just let me know.
I appreciate it. You guys let me know. I'm always happy to do it. George, Aaron, I really appreciate you having me on. I think there's going to be some exciting stuff ahead, and so we want to get the word out there to get people out to the ballpark. So I'm always happy to spend some time with you guys.
Fair enough.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Coach.
Thanks a bunch, guys. Have a good night.
You too.
All right, you too. All right, that was Coach Jordan Bischel. And again, you can get tickets at www.gobearcats.com/tickets.
Those are great deals on tickets, by the way. I mean, that's one of the best entertainment values in the city when you're looking at how many games you get out of that and what you put out there. And even if you can't make all the games, I mean, it helps the program. The more tickets, the more season tickets, it helps that program. And I'm telling you, this guy has won everywhere and won big. And what he did at Central Michigan was very impressive. 5 seasons, 4 MAC titles. And, the MAC's got some decent baseball in there, and he goes 177 and 80 during those 5 seasons. I mean, that's phenomenal.
Yeah, should be some exciting times, whether it's this season or whether it's in the incoming couple seasons as he builds this team up more or less from the ground. I mean,
yeah, but I love his attitude about doing it.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I like that he's familiar with the conference as well.
Yes. Yeah, very much so. And it seems like he has what is a solid plan when it comes to recruiting. And, it's interesting, those camps and stuff he was talking about. It seems like he has a good grasp on what his task is ahead and how to tackle it. And we'll see if that results in wins, because it is a tough ask going into this conference. This year is going to be very, very tough. There's some, as he said over and over, very good baseball in that Big 12 top to bottom.
Yeah, that was a great question, El Chihuahua. We appreciate that one.
Yes, it was. And, I'm down here in Central Florida territory now in the Orlando area, and talking about the Big 12 and the impact, fly into the airport, and on their marquee signs and stuff with their partners with the airports and stuff is the Big 12 conference. So, it's all over down here too, with Central Florida being one of the 4 new teams in, and then, 4 more coming in next season. And as a former UC player and current NCAA coach told me over the weekend, it's becoming a very, very powerful conference now where, what are we going to have? 20 teams in that conference next year. And it's a dogfight, as he was talking about the basketball, and it's like, the Bearcats have played very, very good basketball, and they're 4-5 in the conference. And I think if they played that way in the American last year, they might be like 8-1 or 7-2 if they had played that kind of ball.
Yeah, I think there's 4 teams, if I'm not mistaken, ranked in the preseason top 25 for this conference. So I think you'll certainly see some fights for sure.
Yep.
Kind of switching gears here a little bit, still in the same vein of baseball. There is some baseball news for the Reds and also the Bearcats, as a hometown hero is coming back on a minor league deal, as Josh Harrison is going to be joining the Cincinnati Reds. From my understanding, it's not the first time that the two have flirted with a union of sorts, but Josh Harrison officially on the Reds roster as they get ready to go into spring training here in a couple weeks.
Yeah, what a major league player he made himself into. Certainly always had the talent. And we should also add that the Reds earlier made Josh's brother, Vince, the manager of the Dayton Dragons. So now we got 2 Harrisons, and Vince was with the organization before, but he's now going to be the manager of the Dragons. Josh is going to be going to training camp, spring training with the Reds, and trying to earn a spot on this team. And he can play all over. He can play anywhere. And I know everyone looks and it's like, my God, they're so crowded at infield. Why do they get this guy? Well, he can play the corner outfield positions. He's experienced. We'll see if he makes that final roster. But with his experience, and we'll see what he's got left in the tank. But if he does, he's going to be a nice addition for them to have a seasoned vet that's going to be able to come off that bench whenever and play wherever and take on whatever role. He's played in a couple all-star games. To me, there's no downside to this. I mean, it's a risk-free contract, and let's just see what happens. And how injuries are and everything else. Right. You can never have too many good ones. So we'll see how it plays out. But it's nice. I mean, I hope he gets to put on a Reds uniform and play. I've always wished that for him. Going to Princeton High School and then going to UC, and boy, he had some really, really good years there with the Pirates. And so we'll see how it plays out. But yeah, low risk signing, and maybe it'll be some reward for the Reds and for Josh.
Now, wanted to get that story done and out of the way before this little gem. I'm fairly certain I'm not being tricked by the internet here, but I did see that the Cincinnati Reds signed an 18-year-old from San Jose del Cabo, Mexico. And his name, get this, George, his name is Ichiro Cano Hernandez. If that kid's not born to play baseball, I don't know who is.
Hey, no doubt about it. Very interesting. And obviously the parents down there have some keen baseball sense there going with those names.
Yep. So I just thought that was a fun little gem to drop there. But outside of that, there is some Bearcats basketball to talk about as we are halfway through this conference play. And I'm certain that you were able to take in the victory against Texas Tech, not in person, of course, but at least watching it, as Cincinnati wins on the road 75-72 in Lubbock, led by Simas Lukosius and his 16 points. What a game.
Yeah, it was. And Simas did have the 5 turnovers, but he was so big down the stretch for him and hit 2 really big shots, at 3 and then that shot in the lane. Just really, really, and he's been asked to carry that load and do some things in crunch time, and he came through big time down there at Texas Tech. And that was a crazy game. I mean, that was such a fun game to watch, and you just never really felt either team was going to pull away, and it was just back and forth. And I forget how many lead changes. It may have been as many as a dozen. It was tied up. It was just really a fun game to watch. And Bandego was big with the 10 points, 10 rebounds. I thought Day, when you look at the overall shooting, still struggling with the shot, but he did convert on his drives more often than not. They weren't empty drives. He either got the bucket, made a pass, or I thought he was much better driving the basketball and finishing. John Newman playing hurt basically, and the job he did defensively in that game, and just gutted it out. And that's what you got to have if you're going to win these kind of games is warriors like that. And he certainly was. And Skillings played pretty well too. It wasn't happening for him early on in the game, but then he got settled in and helped make a difference. So I also thought that some of the stuff they ran down the stretch was really, really good. And, West takes a lot of grief for some things that happened down the stretch and maybe not calling timeouts. Where I thought this, and I'm not a huge critic of his in-game calls. I know some are, but I thought this was his best by far. I thought they were really, really good, and all the stuff they ran seemed to work, or at least gave them a look that they wanted. And I just really felt good about that game. In fact, I was so mad after West Virginia seemed like the end. It's like, this is the loss they couldn't afford. And then you get thinking as Texas Tech draws closer, it's like, well, now if they beat Texas Tech on the road, and do you think in your mind, I would take the Texas Tech win over the win at West Virginia and loss at Texas Tech, because I think that win does a lot more for this team, not in just terms of metrics and, the rankings and the ratings and all that stuff, but also just for them to beat a team like that on the road. And I think this is really going to help snowball. We'll see what happens coming up, because but that team's so special, Houston. But I just think this did them a lot of good in a lot of ways. And some of the things I talked about, like those plays they ran down the stretch.
Not agree more with that. Actually, I think it shows so much about this team, the fact that they were resilient enough to lose to a team like West Virginia on the road, and then bounce back immediately after that, go to Lubbock and win against a very good Texas Tech team. I know that there's talk about they were sick. So was Cincinnati. I mean, they were coming off of a team being sick, which could have potentially been one of the reasons they lost to West Virginia. That said, yeah, I think that there's way more that you can build on with a win like that, as opposed to the loss. Clearly, they're over the loss at West Virginia, as they went to Texas Tech and won. So I think that you're starting to see some real good things out of Jameel Reynolds. Of course, Coach touched on that today in his presser. I don't know if you had a chance to watch that yet or not.
Not the whole thing. I did not hear the part about Jameel.
Yeah, he said he's been showing a lot of consistency over these last two games, and that's why he's starting to see a bump in minutes as he's starting to really get his feet under him. The rest of the team, of course, having the non-con to play through, and he's still getting acclimated with the rest of the team there. And then you were talking about Vic. Vic actually won the Hustle Award, I forget what they called it, the Hustle and Effort Award, after the team watched the playback of the video playback. I guess they voted Vic the Hustle and Effort Award winner this after the Texas Tech game. So he's trending in the right direction, as well as he's looked off since being sick. But I was talking with Chad on the nightcap tonight. I think he looked far less emotional in this one than he generally does, even when he's playing bad. He didn't really seem to be. We've seen him go just very emotional.
Right? No, he has. I'm concerned. I wonder how much him being sick certainly didn't help. I don't know if there's a hangover from that or what, but I am a little worried about him offensively here and what's gone on. And I mean, I got him like 4 of 25 for the last 4 games from the field, and that's not him. He's still shooting over 50% for the season, but his shooting percentage was way up there until this dry spell. They have been. I got them 3-1 in those games. I guess that's or no, 3 losses, 1-3. That makes sense. That concerns me a little bit because Vic's offense is something they need. Now, Jamil can keep coming on like he has come on, and I totally agree with Wes. And that's why I thought the game before, I don't know if he was mad about the technical at West Virginia. Well, I thought down the stretch, Reynolds should have been playing in that game because he showed up much better than the other bigs in that game. And I thought that's who should have been in there in crunch time. And then, you look at Vic's stats too, 0 of 8 from 3 over that 4-game stretch. Stop shoot. I know maybe he makes them in practice. I guess he's got a green light. I don't like it. I don't like it. But, he's had a week to rest now and hopefully get everything back and get his legs back under him. And hopefully we see a different Vic offensively in this game coming up Saturday. But I'm glad to hear that they felt like the effort was there and, hustled back a couple times and getting on the floor and things like that. I like that out of him. And that's when he's playing at his best, but it just hasn't been working for him offensively, and hopefully he finds it. And I'm sure Wes is, exploring every avenue to get Vic back on track with his offensive game.
I'd agree. As we're mentioning all the other bigs, I think we'd be remiss if we did not mention the double-double by Aziz, as he has 10 and 10, and he's only credited with 2 blocks. We've all been talking about it on this channel here, this whatever show since the game. We all think that he probably had closer to 4 to 6 blocks in that one. Wes even mentioned it in the after-game presser that he doesn't think that he got the right stats there. But
they should.
I don't know.
When he blocked himself, when he shot that ball at the bottom of the backboard. No, I should. But yes, no, he played. He actually gave them very good minutes, and something he does that I have not probably given him enough credit for in my mind is just he's not always in position to rebound like you think maybe he should, but he's always making a difference around rebounds, and he had a great game rebounding the ball against Texas Tech. I mean, he had a tremendous game, 10 rebounds, and he had a lot of big ones in that game. And they were all big. When you're in a game that close, the right. One grab in the first minute is as big as the one you grab in the last. So kudos to him. He's made a difference underneath there. And sometimes it doesn't look pretty, and he alters a lot of shots too. Just people knowing he can do what he does. And so hopefully Wes finds a nice mix with him and Jamil and Victor and they get better and continue to get better as they progress down this stretch of the season.
Houston, the number 5 team in the country, will be here. I don't know that. I don't think they're going to lose to Oklahoma State if that game's not already over yet. They were,
and I meant to keep an eye on that, but
they were up 20. I know Chad was keeping an eye on it. I believe it's over. 79-63 was your final there in Houston. But Houston will be here in Cincinnati at Fifth Third Arena on Saturday, 4 p.m. tip. Neon night, wear black. This is the beginning of the second half of conference play. And after Houston, as things currently stand, there is not, as of right now, there is not another ranked team on the schedule after Houston. But how important is this Houston game?
Oh, it's very important. And Wes has not beaten Houston since he got to UC. Bit of a rivalry. I guess maybe it might be a little one-sided now, but, there's been some nasty clashes over the years on the basketball court. We've seen players get bit in the leg. We've seen all kinds of stuff happen in these Houston games. And Houston plays hard. I mean, they are like a throwback Bearcat team in a way, where they try to lock you down with defense, and they'll scratch your eyes out to get a win if they have to. And you give Kelvin Sampson some credit for what he's built down there, because it's not just this year's team. He's been doing this for a while down there at Houston, and they are a problem anytime you play them, and they're going to be a problem on Saturday. They've been a little more vulnerable on the road, and maybe the Bearcats get them, and that would be a humongous win if they could pull that off, because, you look for UC to at least go 5-4 in these last 9, because they were 4-5. 9-9. You look at all the tournament stuff, and it looks like that would get them in, and they've got some big wins there. But boy, if they got that one, then you're starting to think, well, maybe 10-8, maybe 11-7. You don't know what can happen. If first of all, if you get Texas Tech on the road and then you can get Houston at home and have 2 W's out of that, you deserve to go to the tournament. And I would think that the Bearcats would be able to carry that momentum on into some March Madness here.
And I do stand corrected. Iowa State is ranked. I do apologize. I'm
Yeah,
totally blaming.
What is their ranking? Do you have that up?
They're currently 14.
Okay.
But I was going off of Bearcats, GoBearcats.com, and they didn't show the ranking there. And then, of course, you do have Houston again in February 27th as well. So I guess 3 ranked games left on the schedule, but we'll see.
Which that sounds manageable compared to what they've been through.
Compared to the gauntlet that has been thus far. Yeah.
Exactly. But we'll see. They have to play well. I mean, there are no layups. There are no tap-ins in this conference, as we've seen and as we saw last week in West Virginia. And West Virginia got that big man back. And my God, he made a huge difference in that game. And UC could not deal with him. And that's another reason I thought Reynolds did the best job. And I thought he should have been in there down the stretch. But it sounds like Jamil may see some more time. And again, you get those guys in the game and you see how they react and who's playing well. He's got some flexibility there. And I think he's smart enough to use it.
Speaks to the depth on this roster, and they've shown that anybody can really go off at this point any given night. And especially when you have, I think there were 4 or 5 guys that hit double digits. 1, 2, 3, 4 guys with double digits, and then Day at 9. That's a great team effort. And something that I don't know that even some of the top teams in this league, as far as depth go, I don't know that all the top teams have the bench that Cincinnati has.
No, they and it runs, the bigs, the wings, the guards. They've got it. And hopefully they put it to good use down the stretch. It's very exciting, though, that we're even talking about it this way and seeing a team that, you had some high hopes for, but they can get really, really good the rest of this season. They've been showing improvement. That's what you want to see, and you want to be playing your best ball in March, and there's no reason they can't do that.
Other than that, I don't know that I have anything Bearcats football or Bengals related. We didn't have much time for a pregame setup, you and I, as you are in Florida, and then we had Coach. But do you have anything else in regards to either of those two things?
No, looking forward to the Super Bowl on Sunday, and I don't know who you like in that one, but I will say this. I can't bet against Kansas City. I can't, because you can't bet against Patrick Mahomes and what he does. And he's not the only thing they have. In fact, their defense is pretty darn good. But I'm telling you what, I said it last week, and that kid is always out there, no matter what. He was hurt at the end of last year, and they end up winning the Super Bowl because somehow he finds a way. He must just be made of rubber. I don't know, because he always answers the bell and turns in a performance. And, he made a difference against Baltimore, and the Chiefs are getting 2.5. I don't know that I'll touch it either way, but I know I'm not betting against Mahomes.
There's 2 billion Swifties that are going to buy merchandise the second the Chiefs win and the clock hits zeros. So, yeah, the NFL is going to do everything
all that, but yeah, I know. Isn't that amazing?
They're going to do everything they can to make sure that the Chiefs win.
I don't believe the conspiracy theories, but I understand where they come from because of that reason. When that kind of, you're talking about those kind of bucks, look, it can happen.
One last thing I wanted to touch on that's not normally a topic that we would broach here, but it makes sense to do so. There were some weird comments made about Cincinnati being a hockey town, and potentially moving an NHL team to Cincinnati. Did you catch any of this as you've been on vacation?
Oh, I did not.
So the commissioner of the NHL was apparently asked about Cincinnati as an expansion city, and I guess we're talking about how they've had discussions in regards to this. The only place that makes sense would be the former Coliseum, U.S. Bank Arena, Heritage Bank Arena, whatever it's called these days. I'm not even certain. I feel like it changes names every other year. But that would be the only place that would make sense downtown, and that would have to be fully gutted to do anything like this. Of course, it would bring in plenty of revenue, as NHL teams do, but there's also a finite amount of entertainment dollars to be spent in this region, and that would take away from some of the other places. I'm not sure that would necessarily be a good thing here, but I was curious to get your thoughts on the matter.
Yeah, honest to God, I just don't see it happening. I just don't, because as you said, there is a finite amount of entertainment dollars and also advertising dollars, sponsorship dollars. You know, you got the Reds, you got the Bengals, you've got MLS in town with FC Cincinnati. So that's 3 major league franchises for an area this size. And then, you know, you've got Division I football, you've got 3 Division I basketball programs in the area. I just don't see it happening. I really don't. I know for a while there was a lot of talk about, you know, perhaps the NBA coming back because, you know, they haven't been around since the Royals left in the early 70s. And that never materialized. And that's a big reason why. I mean, I just don't see the suites selling out and the tickets selling out, because if you've been to an NHL game, that's a pretty expensive ticket. If you're sitting down low, you know, along the side, you're looking at $100 a pop. I just don't see it happening.
The very last thing that you would want to see is the city bring in a franchise such as an NHL franchise and it fail, like
Right.
a lot like the Tampa Bay Rays, where they're considering moving out of Tampa because the dollars aren't there. They're not selling out the stadium. Even on playoff runs, they're not selling out playoff games.
Well, that team's done, and they struggle like that down there. And, you know, part of it was that that stadium was just awful for people to go to. And,
Right.
you know, I remember when they built that thing, and I went down there and it sat empty for a while. And I was down there for an NCAA regional one time. And I mean, it rained and the press area flooded and they kept having trouble with the shot clock and everything. It was just abysmal. And I don't know why they've never been able to get that right down there in Tampa, because, you know, Tampa has a lot going on for it. But I just, to see another pro major league franchise, because we do have the Cyclones and
Right.
their brand of hockey is, you know, it's a value to go down there. You can take your family down to a Cyclones game, and, you know, they've got their niche, and it's a good one in this, and they serve a hell of a purpose, and they do a great job, and it's entertaining, and you can take your kids there, and they have all the cheap beer nights and everything else. I just don't see the NHL working here.
I was just curious to get your thoughts before we got out of here, as it's been a topic of conversation around the social media here in the city. So
yeah, I just
enough.
don't. I like the more the merrier, but I just, you know, I'd like to say it could happen, but I just don't see it. And, you know, you got the Blue Jackets right up the road.
I agree. Well, that's going to wrap it up for another week here on George in the Jungle. Again, be sure to check out Remington Tavern, 8892 Glendale Milford Road, 45140, where they have your daily happy hours from 3 to 7 p.m. $5 Woodford Wednesdays. You can follow them on Instagram at RemyTavCincy or follow them on Facebook. But another show. George, enjoy your time in Florida. Again, thank you to Coach Bischel. And we hope that the Bearcats baseball team starts off hot.
Coaches
But
and pro.
we will see you next week, 9 o'clock p.m. here on the Bearcat Journal Twitch and YouTube channels. But until then,
Wish me luck on the golf course tomorrow. I need it.
good luck, George.
Thank you.